Aloha. Welcome to another episode of All Intuitive Conversation. I'm Felicia Miller Johnson. I conduct work life video interviews with career professionals that become an all intuitive conversation. Aloha, and welcome to another episode of All Intuitive Conversation. I'm Felicia Miller Johnson, and as an all intuitive executive and life coach, I encourage people to live smart and ascend to new levels of success. Today, I have the pleasure of connecting with author. So let's bring him to the screen. Aloha.
Aloha, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Everything's good. Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. We were determined, y'all, to get this going today.
Yes.
Technical difficulties, but we just stayed with it, and here we are presenting and connecting together. So, Arthur and I have never met before this 10 minutes before we just started this live. And so I'm going to be taking time to get to know him just a little bit. So, what I do know from your LinkedIn profile that you have is that you help job seekers and career professionals.
Correct. Yes.
And what stood out was six figures. So tell me a little bit how you got into this line of work.
So I actually started in the world of recruiting back in 1996 after leaving one of the big four public accounting firms, KPMG.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, my first year, I hated it.
Okay.
But one of the reasons why I hated it was I worked for, back then, one of the largest international recruiting firms,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very, very corporate. Very, and back in the day, there were no, I mean, email was just starting. So we had
Right.
phones, we had beepers, we had fax machines. And, like in most organizations, you've got a manager, director, boss, and we were required to meet physically with 60 people a week.
Wow.
Yes. Now, to actually meet 60 people a week, imagine how many people you have to actually call and then invite and actually show up on a weekly basis. So, anybody that's been around for a long time in the world of recruiting, that's old school recruiting. Um, fortunately, I was fired. But a couple of job seekers that I was working with referred me to a smaller firm
Mm-hmm.
where that kind of gun to your head daily meeting 60 people a week wasn't there. And so what I realized is that I was able to kind of let my wings go
Hmm.
and fly. And I hit it out of the park in the first 6 months. Again, this is 97 now.
Right.
I closed $250,000 worth of business. Of course, my commission was a very small amount of that. So
Uh-huh.
um, I came to the owners and I asked them if they would consider me to be a partner. Of course, they said no.
I'm about to say after how long was that? The 6 months?
6 months, yes.
Okay. They said
But they
no.
but they never had a high producer like myself. Anyways, they said no. And in April of 98, I went off on my own and started my own recruiting firm, Global Recruiters. And a lot of what I did as a recruiter, or a lot of what recruiters do, really is career coaching. You're constantly talking to people, looking at resumes, giving advice, getting them ready for interviews, and you see kind of the different trajectories people take throughout their career as a result of your advice.
Mm.
And when the economy crashed, kind of similar to what's happening a little bit right now with all the layoffs, I had I had somebody that I placed, and she came to me bawling. She was 25 years old back then,
Mm-hmm.
and she was just completely lost. And so, based on my recruiting knowledge and experience back then, which was already um, 10 years into me being a recruiter, that's where I thought of what today is known as the 8-step job search system that I coach and train and teach my clients. So that's kind of the long and short story of how I got into career coaching.
Okay. So thank you for sharing a little bit of that because you immediately had four cards that kind of came out as you were talking and sharing your story. And one of them was this picture of this angel and being consoling this woman who's basically kind of has this like broken heart and
Wow.
healing. And so it was this whole conversation where you were talking about the young lady that you had consoled and coached. But it also was the connection about when you were talking about you were fired and let go. I want to go back to that part because there's this thing that's going, a feeling that's being connected.
Mhm.
Especially now, there are lots of individuals that are being let go and fired from some of the, huge corporate organizations.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about, was that a surprise? Was that a shock? Was that relief? Because you started with saying, you kind of really hated it. So, what was the feeling that Arthur was going through when you were laid off?
To be honest, it was
Yeah.
relief. It was relief. Like I pretty much knew that it was going to happen. Um,
Mhm.
and being almost 52, looking back at it, and having a couple individuals who saw kind of the value in me,
Yeah.
even back then at a very young age. I was only 25, 26, and they referred me.
Uh-huh. There's a young guy by himself on this, yep, young age. Uh-huh. Keep going.
So they referred me to the smaller firm, which obviously I joined, and I blossomed. I let my wings go, and
With all the butterflies around, all your wings go. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
amazing.
It's so like that is the connection. Like, okay, I was young, but I'm still butterflies also a transformation, right? This change. But it
Mhm.
was also because all the four cards you got are like sword cards, which basically talks about decisions, precision, could be cutting edge, kind of going either way is how I usually kind of look at that, right? So you have
Mhm.
this broken heart here, but yet, you're young, you're still flowing and transferring. But then you also have this card here of a woman that is meditating. But what it says on the bottom of this card, it says insights that come from meditation, the need to rest or take a vacation, allow yourself more time before making decision, or mental exhaustion, get more sleep. And what stood out was the mental exhaustion. Like you said, seeing the 60 people a week, having to do all these different things, like that can be very tiring and just
Yeah.
overwhelming. Because in the next person, was they say take a vacation, guess what? Now we have somebody that's at the beach, and which is like very serene
My
and
favorite place.
well, of course it is. And so that was like the last card that kind of came out. Like I'm protecting myself, my energy, and what I want to achieve. And it says on the bottom of the card, follow your own heart rather than trying to make others happy, pretending there's no problem, over analyzing like a situation. So it's like you followed your own heart when it sounds like you now have your own business and organization or helping individuals in their career decisions. So I'm really following and sensing the energy in that regard. So now tell me about your Ideal client.
The
Yeah.
ideal client
Mm-hmm.
um, really is somebody that is at a point where they want change.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people think they want change, but then they go back to meddling and being that hamster in a wheel, and nothing really happens. So the ideal client, it could range from. I mean, typically it's somebody that's probably at the not they're like in the mid area of their career. They've been working 10, 15 years. They may be at
Mm-hmm.
a crossroad. Um, they may have been working at a company for 10, 15, 20 years. And like I always share with people in that kind of bucket, when people work at companies that long,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of swimming under the water and they never come up for air. And so what happens is they forget their value. I spoke to somebody today who's been with the company for 26 years and
Mm-hmm.
she's not even over 100,000. And her health is going to you know where.
Mm-hmm.
She's stressed out. She's burnt out. And all it takes, and I'm sure you can agree with this, Felicia, and hopefully many others, all it takes is that little will to take that one step. And when you do that, the clouds start dispersing. You start getting clarity. It's kind of like going on a mental vacation, right? Your mind and your body,
Mm-hmm.
they automatically go into
Mm-hmm.
this resting, I would say almost peaceful mode that,
Yeah.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do something. And I never used to believe in the law of attraction
Hmm.
or a lot. I mean, even a lot of kind of the cards that you're showing. But I think the message is the same is when somebody puts out that mindset that things are going to change
Yep.
and they keep it positive,
Yep.
things do change. I've seen it 100 million times.
Card that came out. You had four more that came out. Theme of this is flow. Trigger statement that a client can say is, why are things such a struggle? And it says, true statement, I am in flow, which I place right under the meditation. It says, take a breath, dear one, just right under this one. It says, and allow yourself to feel the flow of life through you. Release your need to do and just be. Right? As we were talking about the young lady, they may be just frustrated, not even over 100K, doing all of this work. She's missing her. The next theme literally says is bliss. And this trigger statement says, why am I here? So she's at this work. I'm not happy. People are coming to you. They're probably not happy with their job. Like, I want something different. There's something blissfully missing in my life. And it says, the true statement is, I make a difference. And it sounds like basically what you're kind of instilling in some of the individuals is that you make a difference. You have value. You matter. And the
Yes.
bottom that says, you will have the motivation you need to express your light. Know that what you do today makes the world a better place. Then the next,
100%.
yes. And then the next one is this whole innocence, which is connected back even to here, right? Like the whole youthful and the bliss. And it says, trigger, I have so much to do. True statement, I am playful. It says, let the burdens of responsibility go in this moment and look at your world with the eyes of a child. Now, going back to that and thinking about the eyes of a child, what would you like to see? Thinking about your clients, and you don't have to mention any specific names. What would you like for your clients that you have right now? And explaining that from the eyes of a child.
You know, that is so amazing that you pick on that child subject. And that is because when I part of my coaching actually talks about childhood.
Of course it does.
And the reason that it talks about childhood is that people get into these jobs,
Mm-hmm.
these positions that they don't enjoy. And so when I'm asking them, well, when you were a child, when you were growing up, what
Mm-hmm.
did you enjoy? What were your hobbies? What did you enjoy to do? What were some of your passions? Did you like trains, planes, and automobiles?
Mm-hmm.
Because if once we uncover what those subjects or items or areas were, but you're working for an organization that has nothing to do with your passion and mission and vision, and you're in a role that maybe is good money, but you absolutely hate it,
Right.
this is the root of your unhappiness. And so we need to unravel all of these things. I tell my clients, I'm not in the resume writing business.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm in the changing people's life business. But where it begins is at the root. The first step of my program is
Mm-hmm.
called a career physical.
Hmm.
Just like when you go to the doctor and you're not feeling well, they got to take your blood. They need to see what's
Assess.
not
Yeah.
working. Okay. So the reason I call it that is, again, from an early age in the world of recruiting, one of the first things that I learned as to be a good recruiter, okay, or to be an
Mm-hmm.
excellent recruiter, you have to get to the root. If somebody majored in engineering or accounting, why? Why did you choose that? What do you enjoy about those areas? And it goes back to childhood. Well, I was really good at math. My parents took me to Kuman or wherever, and I really excelled. And then I enjoyed chemistry or science. So you have to get to the root, because that's how I formulate all the other pieces of the program.
Well, of course, it goes back to the theme. The last card that was sitting here was waiting is acceptance. And it says on a trigger, we must remember. And it says the true statement: I am free of the habits that do not serve me. Lay down the armor. Because remember,
Mm-hmm.
lay down the armor passed down to you from your family. Release habits that are not serving you and forgive on behalf of generations past. So it's like embracing the future and accepting. But like you said, many times where that, desires and what we want to do was started in the childhood. And then we quote unquote grow up and we think we're just having to just work, I would say, for money. It's interesting because today I was literally in class and the question that was posed to us was that do we approach a job based off of money or the fact that you enjoy it? And she went around the room and she wanted to answer. And I didn't have one. I was like, both. What is the perception that we're not able to have a job that we enjoy and be paid well for that job? But, we have these beliefs that we kind of set up that either you're paid well and you hate your job, or you love your job and you're starving and can't pay your bills. And
Right,
I'm
right.
like, that is not the case at all. So, what would be your response to that when someone says, Arthur, I've been in this job, this is really paying, my bills, but I hate it. What words of encouragement do you have for that person that's watching right now?
The words of encouragement would actually be to do what I do with my clients, and that is to do what is called a career audit. Do an inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Two things. If you take an Excel spreadsheet and you list all the roles that you've held, all the responsibilities, And then you have three additional columns: your likes, your dislikes, and a summary.
Mhm.
Most people, again, which is why that first step is so critical, the career physical. Do an inventory of what you've done. And second of all, I also have my clients take a career assessment, which basically gives you your strengths, what you value, what you're good at, and ultimately how you're wired. The amazing thing is, when I sit down with a client and I review those first two items, which is part of step number one,
Mm.
there's typically two things that happen. Number one, somebody will say, well, I already knew all of this. And that tells me there's more work that we need to do with that individual,
Mhm.
because that is a false statement. If you know everything, then everything should be lovey and dovey.
Uh-huh.
But most people come back and say, wow, you know what? Number one, on the Excel career dissection, they say, I can't believe I've done all of these things. But I also now see clearly, because I took the time to write it down, of what I really dislike.
Mm.
But now I see what I really like. And the assessment gives us an additional overview of how somebody is wired.
Yeah.
And a lot of that actually taps back into their childhood. So then the question is, well, why have you done all of these things that have nothing to do with you? Or you've kind of gotten off the path. And the number one answer is, well, somebody called me, they had a job, I took it, it was for more money,
Mhm.
and I thought I'm doing what's supposedly right. But here I am 20 years later and I'm stressed out and I hate it. And it's a toxic environment and I can't stand my boss and all of these things. And that's where I come in, because we need to fix all of that and
Yeah.
put together a strategy on how we're going to implement that to make things better for you.
Well, you're definitely tapping into the energy because the two other cards that came out, I went to the success deck that talks about business, individuals, and the oracles, and there was two that came out. The first one that came out was Naomi Klein, and her card by says peddle goods about bads. Dissent is a stable currency, and org against incorporations. So that was kind of tied back into the beginning for those that are watching. Do some research on her to see how that story may align with you. But I'm already hearing the fact about how you were talking about in the beginning of your story, just the corporations, how they've changed, how they just kind of aligned back then, but how it's different, now. And then, of course, the next one was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And on his, it says, flex your assets. And so I was aligning with you talking about write down what things that you've done, your career path, the whole assessment. Frugality in excess, where you're talking about the money. It's like, what does that mean? You got to have a job that you like, but not making a lot of money. Like, what is that really? And then finally, it says the system needs a protein shakeup. And it's like that sounds like that is what you are doing and what you're bringing, and also helping people to shake up their lives, shake up their careers. And then I would encourage you also to look up Arnold Schwarzenegger because he's had what, let's just say, I remember from Conan, the barbarian, all
Right,
the way to,
right.
was he governor of California?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So definitely a whole change in trajectory in the career. So for those that may be like, well, can I do this? Am I able to shake up? Absolutely, you can.
Yes.
And it sounds like, if you're looking for a place to go to connect, to contact the author here. Seemed like he has some experience in that regard, and
A
has a
little bit,
passion
a
and,
little
and desire to
bit.
help individuals with that. So with that, share where people can reach you. Like, okay, I need to know more and connect with author. How can they do that?
Sure, they can reach me on my website, which is www.globalcareeradvisors.com, or my favorite hangout place is LinkedIn. You can just enter my
Right.
name there, Arthur Gluzman, um, and I'll be more than happy to reach out to you, connect with you, um, do a discovery call, find out what's happening, and if you're ready, you have to be ready to make the change. I always tell my clients,
Mm.
I can't be more committed to you than you are to yourself. But if you're committed, I'm going to be there with you until we make it happen.
Ooh, I love the real talk. Call Arthur when you're ready.
Thank you.
Arthur, thank you so much for connecting with me and sharing insight and letting me allow to know more about what it is that you do in serving. I hope you were encouraged to live smart and ascend to new levels of success. And that goes for the same for you that have joined us live and connecting with us. Thank you so much. And until we meet again on another episode of All Intuitive Conversations.